Welcome to 74 Escapes new podcast series Breaking Bread with Vera Loulou. I'm Vera, and I will take you on a gastronomic journey to explore food as an expression of cultural identity. I'll be hosting chefs and industry professionals from all over the world to discuss everything about this art form that really nourishes our souls. Let's start. Today, I feel so honored to speak with Chef Edward Dallin Williams. Edward discovered his natural talent and love of cooking when he began working in his local village pub near Bristol. After, Edward spent time traveling and went on to develop and perfect his skills as a chef in the renowned kitchens of St. John, London. After 4 years, Edward made the move across the channel to Paris, where he continued to make a name for himself as the head chef at Au Passage. With a wealth of knowledge and joint vision, Edward and his partners launched Le Grand Bain in 2017 in Belleville. In 2018, they went on to open their bakery. Chef, how are you today?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. So you're originally from the UK. What brought you to Paris?
I'd been traveling beforehand, and then I'd been working up in London for a fairly large amount of time. And after I'd been working at St. John's, I wasn't really interested in doing more of the same restaurants in London. And then I didn't really want to move back down to Bristol or anywhere else outside of London. And my original thought was actually to go with a friend of mine who had opened up a restaurant in Toronto. And so I wanted to go and join him, but unfortunately couldn't get a visa. I had phoned my friend who was Australian, who had moved to Paris, and he had said, well, if you can't go there, do you want to come here and be the sous chef? And so I did. And that happened to be Sean Kelly, and he was the head chef of Au Passage. And then he left within the first year or so, less than a year, and I kind of became the head chef by default. Because after moving to Paris, I decided maybe I'll go down to Portugal and just chill out and surf and cook.
I love Portugal.
I
Incredible produce, very casual, laid back.
Super cool people.
You can surf.
Yeah, really just a very cool place. And so Lisbon, we're talking like 10 years ago now. So at the time, Lisbon wasn't so expensive. And I found this really lovely apartment for a really cheap price. And if I had bought that apartment now, my life would be completely different, because now the house prices there are astronomical. But I'm glad I came here, and I started working at Au Passage, and then each year I just decided to stay for another year. And then I met Edouard, and he introduced me to his best friend Alexandre, and we decided we would do our own thing. At first we were actually going to do something with the guys from Au Passage, but we decided actually it might be nice just the three of us, and move forward like that.
I find it so unfair that the visa restrictions allow you to, or do not allow you to work where you actually want to. I personally had problems in Paris, but I was able to work in Japan for a little bit. But it's quite difficult, I agree.
My future project in my life, so when I was younger, I studied law. My future project in my life...
So did I.
Did you really?
Yes, I have a paralegal degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy it? Do you enjoy it?
At the time, it was very safe, but this was, to me, I thought I was going to love it. And then I interned in a firm working for a horrendous lawyer, which killed all my inspirations. And this is when I actually got on the plane, went to Paris, and didn't come back for a few years.
Yeah, okay.
And just fell in love with food. So that's my story.
I love food, but I also love law. And I think they're very similar in the aspect that if you don't love it, you shouldn't do it. It's
Absolutely.
It's really long hours. It's really something that you've got to put.
Absolutely.
But in the future, I would like to do something. I would like to go back, finish my law degree, and do something with visas, and try and help people with visas, because
international cooks.
Yeah, it's really, not just internationally, but for example, we have a program where we get asylum seekers to come in, and they start cooking, washing with us, washing dishes. And as soon as we see anyone with any sort of promise, we move them out of the planche because there's a real habit here, especially if you find a really good dishwasher, just to keep them as a dishwasher, because it's hard to find the
It's
dishwasher.
very hard to keep a good dishwasher.
But what that does is it like perpetuates this system of the further back in the kitchen you go, the darker the color of the skin, essentially. You know, like it's always, it depends where you are, but in France, for example, a lot of the dishwashers are Sri Lankan, and we got this one guy he came to us really early on in the beginning, and he was a refugee from Sri Lanka because he was the right hand man of a health minister. He had found out some pretty shocking news and had to leave Sri Lanka pretty quickly. And he came to work with us, and he showed promise. And now he's essentially running the bakery side of the bakery. So, yeah.
I notice it's been happening a lot in the restaurant. I mean, Noma highlights their dishwashers as well, so they become quite famous.
He's a partner now, hasn't he? He's like has shares. But then you see, like this is the thing as well. If you've got people who have worked for you for 4, 5, 7, 10 years, there's a loyalty there that should absolutely be rewarded. And
I think so. It's very hard work.
It's really hard work, but kitchens are one of those things that it doesn't really matter your intelligence, and then it definitely doesn't matter what your race is. In fact, if you're more traveled, the better your cooking will be. But like, so for example, the reason I mention intelligence is because you can start as just a dishwasher with no, like when I was growing up, like it would be criminals or the people who couldn't do school would go into kitchens. And so they would kind of throw you in there, but it was a really good social economic ladder to climb. So you could start at the bottom. Within 10 years, you could be at the top and earning a fairly decent wage, but with essentially no qualifications. You know, you just got to really have a love and a passion for it, and to work hard, essentially. Yeah.
Interesting. So tell me, what was it like growing up in Bristol? Actually, one of my best friends, who happens to be a fabulous lawyer, she went to school there.
I didn't grow up.
Did you grow up at cooking?
I didn't grow up in Bristol. I grew up just south of Bristol. I mean, I've been to Bristol a lot of times. It was and still is a great party city. When I was growing up, drum and bass was pretty prevalent, and it was a great place to hang out. No, I grew up in a little village south of Bristol called Stoke St Gregory, and I moved into what became my surrogate family. And I moved in pretty young, and I started pot wash there when I was 13, at like £2 an hour or something like this. And then I stayed there, and I moved in there, and I lived there, and I went to college, and I did all my A-levels and things like this. And then, so I'd come home from school or from college, I'd do all my schoolwork, and then I would work the evening shift. And then on the weekends, I would work the whole day, Saturday, Sunday, and do splits on Saturday and Sunday. So I was a pretty early starter. By the time I was 18, I was running the kitchen, 18, 19, running the kitchen. And then I went off and went to a Michelin-starred restaurant where, I mean, it was a really good base level. Looking back now, I didn't know how good I had it. For example, we used duck eggs for almost everything because 10 minutes down the road, there was a duck farm. There was just a woman who kept loads of ducks. And so she just had these enormous amounts of duck eggs, but for super, super cheap. So we would make duck egg custard tarts and things like this. And comparing that to now in Paris, I can't find a duck egg. It's super difficult to find an organic,
super difficult to find it.
Unbelievable. And the same, we used to have, the village is directly next to a moorland. And so on the moorland, there's deer and things like this. And so we'd have hunters who would go out, they would hunt the deer, they would bring them back up, we would skin it, gut it, butcher it, do everything. I mean, it's probably illegal. I shouldn't really be talking about it too much, but we would use every single bit of it. We'd make all our own stocks. And this was a time when this really wasn't, especially in pubs, it really wasn't done. That wasn't really the done thing. And so it was a really great background and a really good base knowledge, until I then went to a Michelin-starred restaurant and realized there was so much that I thought I was so well trained at 19, And now when I look back, I think I knew nothing.
Looking back at the duck eggs, I actually happened to work for a Russian oligarch who was absolutely against using any chicken products.
Right.
So he had two homes, one in Altea in Spain, where we had access to duck eggs, and the other one in Switzerland, where you could not find them. So I had to substitute the quail eggs for the regular egg.
Wow.
And it was a mess. Pastry-wise, it was an epic failure every time. It was such a pain in the neck.
Yeah, it's taken me, I think, 5 years to find a good duck egg supplier here that will deliver, and we can order, and it's not a quantity of like 5,000 duck eggs.
Exactly.
Really, yeah. We were so spoiled. We had we grow all our own herbs, but there were farms just down the road. We kept all our own pigs. Yeah, everything. Like I said, we made all.
It's a beautiful thing.
It was It was a really fantastic place. Really great learning place.
Yeah. Unlike Paris, London was never known for its food, until recently. It really became world-class dining destination that captured so many food-obsessive people. When did you notice that it really started to evolve and change?
It was probably, I mean, I don't quote me on any of this, but I would say 2000, around that time. Before that, there was probably like haute cuisine. There was probably the modern, what they called, I can't remember what it was called now, cuisine nouveau or something like that. And it was tiny little things on the plate. And it was when St. John's kind of started, so 25 years ago, they started. So they started in 1995. And I remember being told multiple times that the thing that they were doing was so against what was the current culture at the time for food. And A.A. Gill wrote like a scathing review saying these guys have no.
He's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean,
I think I've read all his books.
He's
brilliant.
An incredible man. And he came out later and said my finger was not on the pulse for that one. But St. John's was one of those things that was long standing and just kept doing the same thing over. But then London started becoming this thing where, I mean, it's just a melting pot. It's absolutely perfect for food. In fact, I think I really wouldn't class very many other cities in the world as good as London, because I mean there are places like, for example, Tokyo, the food scene, in Hong Kong.
Tokyo, absolutely, yes.
London has this thing where there is every kind of cultural food, and you can get it from the cheapest to the highest. So, and it's not really like, hey, do you want to go out for Indian? It's, hey, do you want to go out for like Gujarat Indian? And do you want to go out for Gujarat Indian that's really expensive, or do you want to go out for Gujarat Indian that's really cheap?
Absolutely. Like Jimhana, which I adore.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like there is a value and quality at every price point in London, which is
really. And it's so big. Like, I love London so much, but I am so glad that I just visit there now. Because it was so big. It's so expensive to get from one, and the amount of time that I would spend commuting.
It's very big. It's spreaded. So when you have to get to point A to point, Paris is very compact.
Yeah,
that's the beauty of it.
So if you want to go from one side of Paris to the other side of Paris, it's maximum an hour.
15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. You jump on that blue line 2, you can get from one side to the other in 45, 50 minutes, Driving is something completely different, but I don't have a car. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Paris is really kind of catching up with London in that respect. And I think London will and especially with Brexit, and especially with now the pandemic, I'm wondering where and how London, because London had this beautiful time that in the recent years, it's kind of outpriced itself. So you don't get these like young chefs who can go to another small place. Everybody knows that like any area will be gentrified soon enough. And so the prices aren't low. So you don't get these young chefs who are like hungry and thirsty to do something brand new. Or they are there, but the idea is, well, there'll be private equity backers who will say, yeah, we'll back you, but we want a franchise. We want to be able to make money out of this. So we do one shop now and then 15 in the next 5 years, And that kind of just, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what happens after the pandemic and after Brexit to London's food scene, which is something.
It would be interesting to know.
Yeah.
What do you think are the benefits to being in Paris right now at the moment? for you?
For me, the
Mm-hmm.
government here is, I mean, French culture for the government looking after its peoples and its citizens is really very, very good. You know, like right now, our restaurant is part owned. The building is part owned by the government. So it's a company called Siemp. And so that the rent is stopped for us. And even if it wasn't stopped, it's at a reduced rate to encourage people like us to start
I
businesses.
admired that about the French when I heard the news that they
Yeah,
done this to help the people. Quite
absolutely.
wonderful.
All of our staff are on what's chômage technique, what we in London called furlough or chômage partiel.
Mm-hmm.
And so and that seems to be holding in place. So and the restaurant industry here is one of the biggest sectors after government, you know, so they understand that it's really important that these people, you know, that, well, not these people, myself, everybody has something to fall back on. There'll be some sort of helping scheme to let everything reopen in the best possible fashion to restart the economy. For example, right now they've let a lot of places open terraces, whereas they wouldn't normally have allowed that. We used to have an illegal terrace, which we got fined.
Paris will always be Paris.
Yeah, exactly. The only thing I'm slightly worried about is the tourism aspect, because obviously tourists aren't going to be flocking to Paris. I mean, they will. It will
Or
return.
even if they could, they cannot simply
Exactly.
at the moment. Yes.
I mean, I'm under the idea that it will go back to a sort of sense of normality within the next 2 or 3 years, but for the moment, it's not going to be having the tourists coming in. So there might be a slight reduction, but it's very normal for people to go out and eat here. Most people, I mean, not most people. There's a few people that don't have kitchens in their apartments. Apartments here are so small that they don't have kitchens, or maybe they just have like a small,
Two stovetop.
exactly, just a little stovetop. So it's really, really normal for people to be going out and eating. So yeah, that again will be super interesting to see how it moves forward.
Or they would just eat baguettes all day long, jambon beurre, and a glass of Bardo. What else do you need?
The thing is, like in conjunction with what we were talking about with London, how London changed in 2000, Paris is about 5-10 years behind London in certain aspects. And so right now, the food scene is becoming really, really cool here. You know,
It's very bistronomy.
there is bistronomy, but there's also the new. So when I first got here, you'd have Asiatic restaurants, which would be like Japanese, Korean, and Chinese. And now there's a demand for, I don't want that. I want Szechuan, you know, or I want, you know, I don't want just like I want Shanghai, Szechuan, Beijing foods. I don't want just a generic Asian food. And so like it's really opening up here. So I think when you say they'll just eat jambon beurre, I think French people love jambon beurre and they love French food. But in Paris specifically, there is really this new opening of a palate that people are wanting new foods and definitely eating new foods.
Lots of Vietnamese as well.
Lots of Vietnamese, like there's really, it's one of the reasons that I kind of stayed here is that it's a blank sheet, but it's starting to change. I mean, it's happening in a lot of places everywhere because there's the homogenization of foodies across the world seeing Instagram and going, well, and business people like myself who say, okay, well, let's go and open up this ramen shop in a new city, you know, because it's not there and it can make money and we know it's going to do really well. Yeah.
I find Japanese food to be fantastic in Paris. One of my favorite restaurants is Jin, Saint-Honoré, and then you have Yen as well, which is more casual.
Yeah.
I find that Japanese found their way into France in
there's quite a few
interesting way.
Japanese chefs here in Paris. It's quite usual. Exactly.
Tatsumi.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's quite a few. I mean, there's quite a few Japanese people because there's a lot of Japanese people that come from Japan to come here because they have a romantic notion of Paris in their head, you know, and to live here. And someone once told me that the language intonation is kind of similar.
I heard the same as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so but there's a lot of Japanese chefs that go into like the big 3 stars, and obviously then people fall in love with Paris and then they stay here. And so I think there's a especially now there's a lot of these Japanese chefs coming here and going, actually there's a really big market to do Japanese food, and pretty much everybody in the world loves Japanese food. I mean, it's so
and they have the most amazing work ethic, I would say.
On the whole, Japanese chefs that I've seen are pretty focused. Yeah, I mean that's a really broad stroke, but yeah.
I remember working 18-hour days in Tokyo.
Yeah.
6-7 days a week. It was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
People think that 15 hours seems like a piece of cake after 18. Those 3 hours that you go above. So let's talk about your restaurants. Where do you source your ingredients?
Where do we source our ingredients? So it depends what ingredients. We source pretty much everything from France. In fact, this year was meant to be the year where we pushed for almost everything to be coming from France, which can be a little bit debilitating, but also in and of itself, the rules then kind of make us more creative, or we search out things. So for example, snails, there's no snails in France. They all come from Belgium. Snails and frogs' legs, they don't exist here at all. So you have to buy them frozen from Belgium. So every time you're eating snails in Paris, it's not a...
Snails is the only thing I do not eat. Yes, it's funny. Since I was a kid, snails were not my thing, but I do love frog legs.
Yeah, so frog's legs are delicious. So we had to rethink, because I used to have a lot of those on the dish, and so we on the menu, and so we had to kind of rethink that a little. But for the most part, we try and get everything as close to Île-de-France, so as close to Paris as we possibly can. We work with 2 main farmers who do most of our produce, and one is in the northern tip of Burgundy, so it's really close to France, and the other one is in the south, just north of Marseille, so it's really hot. And the only reason we use him is because we want lemons. So we want to try and get the lemons from
Marseille.
Exactly, yeah. As for meats, we don't use an enormous amount of meat in the restaurant anymore, and a lot of it's pigeon or quail or whole lamb or whole rabbits, and most of that comes from around that area. And then the bulk of the menu is vegetables, or then fish, and then fish comes from, again, as close as we can, but it depends what we're getting. So Saint-Jean-de-Luz will be octopus and scallops and things like that. St. Malo scallops, sorry, and then from the north. One
of my favorite places is Saint-Jean-de-Luz.
So yeah,
spent many weeks there. Yeah,
it's that whole area, Biarritz, Saint-Jean-de-Luz, and then
fantastic. You eat so well. They can be the most simple thing, but just wonderful.
Incredible.
I absolutely love it there.
It's actually really funny because we were talking about what we might do with the restaurant right now, and there is talk. A friend of mine has another restaurant here, and they're keeping their restaurant closed, and they're going to go and buy a restaurant either in the Biarritz or around that sort of area to then for this year, essentially just do a thing there with everybody.
Oh, how interesting.
Who would be working. And I said if they do it, then I might go down there as well. I might take my family and go and do something very similar, and just maybe jump back in the kitchen. Yeah. But products are pretty much everything. French olive oil from the south. Yeah, there's very few things. Most of the flours for the bakery, for example, they're only about 2 hours away maximum. Then we have 2 mills, one in the south of Paris, one in the east of Paris, and they're only 45 minutes away. France is a pretty good place for products. If not one.
I always miss a good game meat, quail and pigeon, and I actually have quail coming today, but you don't want to know what I paid for it. And it's just so much more popular in France and UK, and anything gamey and venison
and also France.
Unfortunately, US is not appreciated in the way that Europe does.
I think also, it's a bit from what I understand, there's legalities to it. So, for example, in France, butchers, it's regularly butchered. You know, the price of calf's liver is the same price as fillet. You know, it's very, very similar in price. So it's quite normal for people to buy and eat both. And butchers, you know, butcher the everything. Whereas from what I've been told, and obviously it's going to be state dependent, but if you want to have like a liver of a cow, you've got to get a butcher wouldn't normally do that. An abattoir wouldn't normally do that. You have to have someone specially come in and check it. So there's legalities behind it all, which don't seem to be the same here. Maybe it's the chicken and the egg thing, which comes first, but supply and demand. Maybe people want to eat it, so it's there, but I would also argue that because it's there, people eat it. I don't know.
Yeah, there's quite nothing like calf's liver with caramelized onions, some polenta.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic. It's such a
Brains,
classic, Italian classic.
brains. Yeah, like here's
Veal brains, very popular.
Here is really, really good. You can pretty much get anything you want. Like one time I tried to do a dish with the cock's comb, this little thing on the cockerel. And I was like, we're never going to find it. If I can't find duck eggs, I'm not going to be able to find that. And then I asked and it was immediately there. They were like, yeah, how much? Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if you raise it yourself, you might just able to
take it.
So, you know, I find it interesting that there's so many women chefs in Paris right now, as well as cooks who are foreigners and not French. Do you think France is changing in any other way in that sense?
I think
what are the changes?
Female chefs. I think female chefs, it's not just France. I think that's everywhere in the world. I think there's definitely been a change since I've been a cook. You know, I've been cooking now for 16 years. And when I was growing up, I had a female sous chef when I was 21, I think, and she was 19, and she was hardcore. She was one of the best chefs I've ever worked with, but she was tough, you know. But it was also when I was growing up from the age of 12 to 21, kitchens were pretty brutal places, you know. It didn't matter whether you were male or female. You had to be tough, or else you wouldn't have. It was just not a very nice environment, really. Whereas now, I think that kind of bullying environment and that alpha male bravado stuff is kind of stamped out from. Like, it definitely doesn't happen in my kitchen. I don't let that sort of stuff happen. I think it's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. We're all there to do the same thing. We're all there to cook. And so I think that's kind of, not just in France, I think that's kind of changing everywhere. You know, I think there were female chefs that were coming in and then they were like, I don't like this. I want to leave.
I had to endure tons of bullying, probably in the first kitchen I worked at, which was a horrendous experience. But I stuck with it. And last two that I worked at were absolutely fantastic. It was the best experience of my life. Really.
I think
it depends on the chef as well.
I think it depends on the chef, but I really think that people are realizing now that, like, if you bully your staff, you might lose excellent talent. Whether they're male or female really doesn't matter. Like, if you bully your staff, or there's a difference between pushing someone hard so that they do their job really well and trying to get the best out of them, to like making someone burn out, or, you know, physically or sexually or verbally abusing someone. Like, those are two very distinct things that I think there's a lot of the, especially the old style chefs. Like I've thought, because my brother's a chef as well, and we've spoken about this a lot.
Oh, is he in Paris or?
No, he's in London. And he works for Tom Kerridge. He's not actually my brother. He's my oldest and closest friend. But we lived together for a long time, since I was 14 to 20, something like this.
Like your brother.
Exactly, yeah. And he's an excellent chef. And we've spoken about this a lot before, and about how 100 years ago you wouldn't have had another shop where you can go and get more eggs and more cream. So your apprentice would come in, and if they ruined that lemon and lime tart because they overcooked it, well, yeah, you were going to go insane. Like, and the ingredients would have been expensive, you know. It wouldn't have been there was no backup. It would have had to be like rule with fear and make sure that everything gets done. But obviously then if you're abused, if you're taught with fear, well, when you then become the teacher, the only way you know how to teach is through fear. And also, if you're accustomed to that abuse, that physical or verbal abuse, then you're going to be using that same abuse to try and teach. And so, but I think this has kind of changed, obviously products, there's not that there. And now it's more about the love of the craft and saying, listen, you've got to get this done. You've got to become a good chef, for you, not just for the machine that you're in right now, but for you individually. You've got to be hardworking, clean, fast, efficient. Otherwise, you're not going to do, the better you are at this and the more creative you are, the more you're going to be able to demand a higher salary or move up the ranks. So I definitely think it's massively changing now. Well, I'd hope so. Anyway.
So personally, how do you create the menu? Do you go from the product to the menu, or you think of a dish? And of course, it's everything you do seasonal. But what is your thought process like?
So every Thursday we have all the kitchen staff get together. The bakery shift finishes, so all the bakers and the pastry chefs come out of the bakery, and then we all go and do yoga. Once that's done, we all come back. The bakery guys and the pastry guys all leave, and then all the chefs sit down and we go through everything that's coming in. So I have a list of all the stuff, because I don't really order anything, if I'm going to be honest. I have our suppliers say, this is what we have, what would you like? Right?
I love that.
Normally the fish would be a little bit more selective of. The meat, obviously we normally only have one meat dish on the menu. And then the vegetables, obviously, like you said, it's very seasonal. So they just say, this is what's coming. This is what you'll get. How much do you want of each thing? And I'll say like 2 kilos, 4 kilos, whatever like this. So then when we sit down with the chefs, we'll say, okay, this is what's coming. What do we have? I don't know. What do we have? For example, what are all our preserves and things like that? Because we're just like everyone else, where we're zero waste. So we try and find all the things that we possibly can do with all our waste stuff. So for example, like white asparagus, we peel the white asparagus, we take the white asparagus trim, we then put it into vat pack bags, and with a little bit of water, a little bit of salt, and we dehydrate that for like 2 or 3 months, and then that goes black.
2 to 3 months.
Yeah. You
wow.
Take it out. Then we make a stock with the blackened white asparagus, and then we would use that for something else. Then we would dehydrate, but we would just pop it in the oven overnight, the white now blackened asparagus trim, so it's dehydrated again, and then we would use that to smoke something else. So we really try and get like the most we possibly can. For example, lemons, we use black lemons an enormous amount, because we use lemons to season up most things. And we're lemons is, well, I sat down one day and I realized we're buying lemons and we're paying such an enormous price for juice, essentially, that I was like, we have to do something with this weight of, it's kilos of lemons per week, 20 kilos of lemons at least per week. So what we do is we blacken them as well, and then we use that for either we completely blacken them and dry them out, and they get turned into a powder and they get used for salts, or they get used for curing things. Or the thing that we do mostly in the summertime is we make little black lemon ice creams, which taste exactly like Coca-Cola, to the point that I think that's what Coca-Cola is. I think someone at some point was making lemonade but had black lemons, made black.
That's an interesting theory.
It's so similar. You could not.
To Coca-Cola.
It's so that. So we sit down, everybody, we write down all the things that we've got, and then we come up with 2 or 3 ideas for each thing. So I don't know, say there's asparagus. We'll say, okay, what do we have? There's black garlic. Let's do an asparagus risotto with a black garlic salsa, right? So that'll be one thing. And then over the next, so this is on a Thursday, we'll make most of the produce comes in on the Friday or the Saturday. And then we'll start making things and getting little bits and bobs together. So by the time we start on Monday, we're open 7 days a week. By the time we start on Monday, there's new things going on the menu. Then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we're back to Thursday. And then the process repeats. But everybody has input. It's really important.
And everybody does yoga.
Everybody does yoga. Everybody has the input, because I really want, my idea is that when my guys come in, if they stay with me for a year or 2 years, I really want them to be able to go and know how they could write their own menu. So they could be ready to go and be junior sous chefs, CDPs, or anything like this. I want them to understand so I moved into this pub when I was really young, right? And they took me in as one, like as a son, basically. And I worked there, and they showed me the business from the ground up and all the back of house and everything else. And I'm almost positive that's why I've done well. That's why I've been successful, because I knew every aspect of the business, and the idea of not just doing a really good dish, but realizing where you open up your restaurant, what are the people around you going to like, what the food that they're going to like, because the food that we were
all
doing,
these factors are very important.
yeah, like every single step. The food that we were doing at that pub, it was really good food, but it was very basic food. Like, and if we put something on there that was a bit flash and a bit like a little bit more haute, it just wouldn't sell, because that wasn't our clientele. So then what my idea is that when I've got guys and girls that come in and work for me, they know more about the aspect of the business. So when I say we can't throw anything away, it's not just a respect thing. It's we need to make money off of everything that comes in. And the more money you generate, the more money you can go back into the business, and the better the business can be. The more we can pay our staff, the nicer plates we can buy, everything. That's the general idea.
So I share a passion for ceramics, like most chefs. I've brought plates from Japan, from all over the world, in a backpack, hand luggage. Who is your ceramicist? Who do you guys use to make your plates?
So we have a girl called Marie, and I don't know her last name. I can't remember her Instagram, because I just go to her. I go to her shop, and basically I draw out some horrifically bad designs, and then she comes to me with the things about 3 months later, and they're all unbelievably beautiful. But she's a French ceramicist, but she's trained a lot in Japan. So it's a very rustic, thick,
clean.
So like the bottom of the plate is very raw. It's very rough. It's very earthenware. And then the glaze will be super smooth, super beautiful. She does things where she moves her fingers through it. So one of my philosophies, or one of my thoughts is, I'm not like super spiritual, but I really believe that if you take a farmer so we have a farmer who it's just him. He does everything by hand. It's all organic. And then he plucks it, puts it in his van, dries it up, and gives it to us. He puts a lot of love into it. Then Marie, the ceramicist, has put a lot of love into her plate. And then I, with all the guys in the team, put a lot of love into the food. And when you put that out,
beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Like it's already vibrating on a level of this. We care about this, and I want to try and give it to you for the best possible price. You don't need to go and spend 400 euros to go and eat really, really good food. I mean, I'm not putting myself in that really great chef category, but I know what we do is tasty, and I know that it's good. I know it's nice, and I know it's a healthy meal, you know. And so when it all comes out, I'm proud of everything that we put out. I'm proud of the guy.
The labor of love of many, many people.
Yeah, and I think I think someone told me when I was younger that perfection is lots of little things done right. And I was like, okay, that's really cool. And so we try and think along those sorts of lines when we're doing it. Whether it's the food or the drinks or the way we run the business or the way everything that we try and do tries to move forward in the best. I don't want to put myself on a pedestal, but the way that I can go to sleep at night and feel like I've done a nice, good job. Yeah.
Bravo. Chef, I can't thank you enough. It was so wonderful to be breaking bread with you.
Oh,
I really, I really hope I can come visit Paris. It's been more than a year, and maybe share a glass of Bordeaux and
yeah.
a few plates at your restaurant. So thank you so much, and
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll see you when you come to Paris.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.